Alright, we will be reviewing the 2005 Coca-Cola 600. Yes, we traveled back 14 years. I know this video is going up really late, so a lot of you are probably watching this the next day, but I have to get it out as soon as possible. So, the Coke 600, the race lasted about 5 hours long. That was one hell of a long race. I'm glad it only happens once a year, because 5-hour races are just like, goddamn. But luckily, it was a good race, and it wasn't a bore fest or anything like that, so let's talk about it. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of incidents in this race. The reason why I say the 2005 Coca-Cola 600, because 2005 Coke 600 is, in the history books, is probably the craziest Coke 600. It had like 20 cautions in the race. Charlotte went through a new configuration / repave / everything, and there just wasn't a lot of grip on the track, and the drivers were just wrecking all over the place. In the first Coke 600 with this package, there was grip, but a lot of the cautions came from tire failures, and specifically in the early part of the race, a lot of them came from the Toyotas. 3 of the 4 Gibbs cars were involved. Matt Benedetto was involved as well, and this was a little bit of a worry for Joe Gibbs Racing, because as these right front tires continued to fail early in the race and through the middle of the race, it seemed like it was only happening to the Joe Gibbs cars. There was one instance where it happened to Chris Buescher in a Chevy, but for most of the race, these flat right front tires was happening to Denny Hamlin or Martin Truex Jr. And when it did happen to Martin Truex Jr. early in the race, it seemed like it hit the wall pretty hard and seemed like it would be done, but these cars have been pretty much well known to be pretty durable. If you don't hit the wall too hard and you hit it pretty square with the side of your car, then you can maybe continue on. After Truex hit the wall, he did say the car felt a little bit tighter, but it didn't look like he lost a lot of speed. So if they could just adjust the car to maybe compensate for the damage, then he could be just fine. The first Joe Gibbs car that had the right front tire fail was Eric Jones. He was also the first one to bring out the caution, but he didn't really hit the wall soft. He hit the wall very hard, and his race was done from that point on. Throughout the early part of the race, there was also, because of these cautions, there was a lot of pit strategy going on. It's a 400 lap race, 600 miles, and the teams only have so many tires. So you had some teams stay out, some teams pit, some teams thinking about the tire allocation after we saw that there were a good amount of cautions, 5 cautions in the first stage alone, I think it was. And one of these cautions was for Daniel Hemrick, who was on old tires. And when he was on old tires, he was falling back. He comes right up on the 34, not clear at all, coming out of turn 4, gets put into the outside wall. That brings out another caution and ends Hemrick's day. Mentioned earlier, Matt Benedetto. He also hit the wall with the flat right front tire. That pretty much ended his day as well. And there was also another incident that involved Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch, who had a little bit of a weird kind of journey through the race tonight. Stenhouse just really checking up here. Kyle Busch gets in his dirty air and can't really do anything and just runs into the back of him, spins out Stenhouse, goes through the turf, synthetic turf, which is very, very nice. I will give Bruton Smith and SMI credit for that turf. It is a very, very good addition, so Stenhouse's car did not get torn up. And so that was really the story of the first about 2 stages. It was just a lot of kind of stop and go. You have like a 20 lap run, 30 lap run, caution for a flat right front tire for a wreck, and that was really the whole gist of the first few stages. So there was not, and what I like about that is there was not a dominant car, not a dominant leader. Everything kept switching, which is nice, especially for a race that is 600 miles long. I mean, if I'm going to sit here for 5 hours, I have to be entertained somehow. And it's no coincidence that 2005 and now 2019, the Coke 600, the most cautions are usually the most entertaining, because it's just such a long race. You can't just sit there for 4 hours with like 2 cautions throughout the entire race. It's just not enough. Brad Keselowski would win stage 1 and 2, but Brad Keselowski didn't really have the best car. Who looked like who had the best car was Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. Elliott was up there a little bit, and even if he hit the wall, Martin Truex Jr. was still running in the top 4 a lot of the race. Pole sitter William Byron, as expected, kind of fell back a little bit, but not too much. He was still running in the top 10 and top 5 most of the race. But it seemed like the race would come down between Kyle Busch and Harvick maybe. Elliott sometimes would. The thing about Chase Elliott this year is when he has track position, he looks really good, but when he falls back, he looks really poor. So if Elliott gets a track position, maybe he can get up there, and I think he showed his strength a lot later in the race. In stage 3, the race kind of calmed down a little bit. Truex was in the lead. His car was doing really well. Keselowski was up there. Logano, the Penske cars, Logano, Keselowski, and Blaney, they had times where they led, and then they had times where they were in the top 5. And then there was one run where Keselowski was running 16th the entire time because he had to put on an old set of tires and was not able to make his way back up through the field for that run. So the Penske cars were always kind of lurking. They were always lurking. And the Hendrick cars were always in the top 10. And this is where I got to give credit to Jimmy Johnson. I've been saying about Jimmy Johnson, I need to see him show speed and not run 15th every race. He ran about 7th to 10th all race. Maybe 12th a little bit, but I give Jimmy credit, and Jimmy did run well. He actually, we're going to get to his finishing position later, but he ran well. That's important, and all his teammates did as well. Stage 3 is won by Martin Truex Jr., and it's looking like he's probably the favorite, but then Chase Elliott gets out in front, and then there's a lot of restarts that start happening. And on one of these restarts, there was a pretty big wreck involving Kyle Larson, who just got himself in a bad position. He wrecks, doesn't really hold on to the brakes, takes out Austin Dillon. Ty Dillon's involved, and a lot of other people. This was probably the big one. There was a lot of heavy impacts there. And for Kyle Larson, after a few good finishes, he goes back to what he was doing earlier this season, wrecking and not getting that good of a finish. And during the course of these restarts, it was always Truex and Elliott on the front row. Elliott would always restart on the inside, and Elliott would do something really smart, I think. He wouldn't really pull away from Truex, but every time heading into 3 and 4, he would make sure that Truex has the advantage down the back straightaway, side draft him, and I think what's really important in this package, and that drivers are starting, or they know, but you know, I think fans are starting to learn, is that it's very important to side draft the driver heading into the corner. You technically don't want to be side drafted getting into the corner. You want to be the one doing the side drafting, because you just get a lot of momentum that way. And Chase Elliott was side drafting Truex down the back straightaway on all 3 restarts, and on all 3 restarts, because of that momentum, on the first lap, you can pretty much hold the throttle wide open if the car allows you, and Chase Elliott's car was underneath him pretty well, and he kept clearing Truex. But I think everyone kind of knew that Elliott's car it was a good short run car, but it wasn't as good as Truex, even if Truex hit the wall earlier in the race. And after a few laps, about 10, 15, 20 laps, Truex starts working Elliott, and then he will get around him and then pass him. And Blaney's running in third, trying to run down Elliott, and everything kind of seems like if there was not going to be another caution, but of course there's going to be another caution. Denny Hamlin was the one that brought out one of the first cautions with around 50 to go. Elliott would fall back on the following restart. Logano will get in a second place. Blaney, Keselowski, all these guys are kind of up there. The Penske guys kind of just showed up, and Logano and Blaney were running second and third behind Truex, trying to run Truex down. But Truex, after about 10 laps, kind of pulls away again. And then Blaney has a weird tire issue, left rear, probably going loose. And as he's going down pit road, then Brad Keselowski gets a tire issue and spins out. There's no conspiracy theory here. Keselowski legitimately did have a tire issue. This brings out the caution that actually did help out Penske, because they, if Logano could maybe win the race, and it caused a little bit of doubt for Truex. Pretty much everyone comes down pit road to take 4 tires, and Truex is the first one off pit road with 4 tires. But Ryan Newman is the first one off pit road with 2 tires. And when Ryan Newman is on the front row with only 5 laps to go, I think in history there have been a lot of interesting finishes when Ryan Newman's on the front row with lesser tires with only a few laps to go in NASCAR history. And David Reagan as well stayed out with about 25 lap old tires, and he was on the front row. And then Truex's spotter had the audacity to ask, but I did enjoy what Mike Joy said here. If you don't ask, the answer will always be no. That's a motto I live with in my life, especially when it comes to asking people out, because I'd rather be told no in the face anyways. It hurts a lot more, and it...
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Anyways, for you kids out there, always ask, because again, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So Truex's spotter asked Reagan if they were going to go to the back with 5 laps to go. It wasn't going to happen, of course not. And so the ensuing restart goes, and they go 4 wide down the back straightaway. Truex is on the complete bottom. Newman's just in a sandwich, not knowing what to do, and Dave Reagan's on the outside just being like, oh, God help me. Kyle Busch is trying to find a way through. Logano's trying to find a way through, and then Truex slides up in front of Logano coming out of 4. Gets really loose, is able to hold on to it. And then once Truex is out in front and Logano's behind him, can't make a move right away on the next corner. Pretty much a done deal. Truex would come around and win the Coca-Cola 600. And that final restart could have played out in many different ways. I think Kyle Busch had a really good chance if he would have pushed David Reagan and kind of just maybe gotten Reagan out of the way a little bit. But he kind of tried passing him initially, and it didn't really work out. But it was really impressive. I think this is one of the races I'm more impressed with Truex out of all of them. I haven't always been the most impressed with Truex. Like, yeah, he has a great car, and he's a very good driver. But in this case, he really did seem like he had the odds against him, being third in the inside lane, maybe getting boxed in. But he was able to stay patient enough to push Ryan Newman at the certain amount of time, and then let Newman side draft and let Kyle Busch get in the middle 3 wide, and then he got the run to get underneath Newman. That was the biggest thing for Truex, is he had to get force at 3 or even 4 wide at this point, and get that bottom lane heading into 3. He had the grip to make it stick, but he had to get the right line and not be held up. So this one was a really impressive win by Martin Truex Jr. And with a total of 14 cautions, it was a pretty hectic race. To the race results, Truex, Logano, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. round out the top 5. Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch had interesting kind of battles with a few laps to go. Chris Buescher in 6th, Alex Bowman, Jimmy Johnson, William Byron, and Kevin Harvick round out your top 10. To touch on some of the drivers here, Logano had a quiet night and somehow finished in 2nd. Never had the fastest car, but you had a fast car, but it wasn't really up there. And that's why I feel like Penske has been a lot this year, even though Keselowski's won some races. It just seems like they're fast, but they don't have the fastest cars, and that's kind of what holds them back a little bit. Kyle Busch gets a good third place run. I think he had a really good shot to win if he just made a different move on that restart, but he's the king of restarts, so, you know, it is what it is. Chase Elliott has been on a really good run of form. I think that 9 team has definitely found something, and it seems like Chase Elliott is always the loosest car in the field. I don't know if... He just seems he's very out of control. The rear end is definitely trying to rotate a lot, and Alan Gustin has certainly found something in that setup. And Chase Elliott's just wheeling it, and loose is fast, and that's always going to be a rule in NASCAR. No matter what package we use, loose is fast. Elliott definitely seems like on these mile-and-a-half tracks, he drives a really loose race car, and that's why he's able to kind of keep up with the Gibbs guys and the Penske guys and be the best Hendrick car pretty much every race. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had a really good run, interesting night, gets a top 5 finish in the Roush Fenway car, even though Kyle Busch embarrassed him when when Ricky Stenhouse tried to get the bumper to him and completely failed. He still got a 5th place finish. Buescher in that Chevy doing what he needs to do. He's a quiet driver. He's just a really good wheelman in 6th place. Jimmy Johnson in 8th. But before that, let's get to Alex Bowman in 7th. Bowman had a very interesting night and was able to fight back to 7th. He had a lot of adversity he had to fight through. So getting back to 7th was a really good result for him. And Jimmy Johnson, like I said, getting an 8th place is just good because it's, again, not really the finishing result that I'm looking at. It is the speed in the car, and he was not the slowest Hendrick car. I don't think he was, to be fair. He wasn't the best, but he ran decent all night. Not great, but decent, good, top 10. If you're running in the top 10 and you finish in the top 10, that's the baby steps to getting a little bit better. William Byron gets a 9th place finish. I think he might be a little bit disappointed, but he's getting there. I think the qualifying results for William Byron are definitely there, but he has to maybe just get a little bit better in the race. I don't know if that's the car, if that's him. There are some people that are just better at qualifying than they are at the race. I think Ryan Newman is definitely one of those guys when he was, younger in his days with Penske. I mean, that's why they called him Rocket Man. So you have some guys that are better in qualifying than the race. And I think William Byron is good with qualifying right now, but then again, in these packages, you kind of can go full throttle. But William Byron's also qualifying well at tracks where, it takes a lot of talent, throttle control, and all that. So, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering why he fades back in the race, but if he could just get a little bit better, he's still really young, still raw talent, so we'll see how he goes. Kevin Harvick actually fought back to get to 10th place. There were a couple times where he got caught on green flag pit stops, pitted, and then the caution came out. Eric Almirola in 11th, not really much to say. Didn't really see him a lot of the race except for the first few laps. Corey LaJoie, probably driver of the day because he finished in 12th, and to finish 12th in that 32 car is really, really impressive. Stayed out of trouble all night and just did a really good job. I mean, he finished ahead of Ryan Blaney, finished ahead of Paul Menard, guys like that. So, I mean, that's the best he can possibly do in that car. So, definitely a really, really good drive by Corey LaJoie. Reagan in 15th, Newman in 16th. Those two guys restart in the front row, and in 5 laps, they fall back. Not really that much of a surprise. Denny Hamlin in 17th, wrecked right at the end. Got loose coming out of 2. Might have gotten hit, I'm not sure, but then hits the inside wall really hard. Daniel Suarez in 18th, Brad Keselowski in 19th, and Matt Tifft in 20th. And then the rest of the field who had some trouble throughout the race, and that's why you guys see, Clint Boyer down here. He had trouble during the race. Kurt Busch as well had an incident with his brother a little bit, and that ruined the front of his car. And then obviously the rest of the field, Austin Dillon, Kyle Larson, Eric Jones down here as well. In the end, it was a solid Coca-Cola 600. I think 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. I hate to admit it, but this package, which is definitely not as fun as a driver, but it's very different. It's just a completely different way of racing. I think that's the biggest thing I can say about it. It's so different that it takes a lot getting used to. And while my preference, and I think a lot of fans' preference, will still be the old days of, well, not even the old days, just the natural way of NASCAR, which is high horsepower, you get off the throttle, a lot of off-throttle time, and the cars are heavy, and you slide them around. I think that will always be the preferred style of racing, but this is just very different. The drivers have a lot of control now. They have a lot of stability. They're able to make a lot of moves. And I think as long as it's a night race, and as long as the drivers have to just lift a tiny bit, they have like the ability to go wide open, but they got to lift a little bit. I think that is where the package shines the most. I don't think it shines at all tracks. I think it only shines at specific tracks. So that's why it has still a lot of work to do, but I can actually see myself watching this in the future because I think it is very entertaining in a way. I mean, we had a Coke 600 where I think no driver really dominated. There was always a lot of changes going on through the race. I think that was because of a lot of cautions. But still, I mean, at Kansas, the All-Star race, and now here, I think we've seen that the package has potential if you can accept a different style of racing, and the track temperatures can't be too hot. If the track is too slick and drivers have to lift too much, the package gets in trouble because there's no horsepower underneath the cars. At the end of the day, it was a solid Memorial Day weekend with the Indy 500 Formula 1 race and the Coke 600 Formula 1 with Lewis Hamilton putting down a hell of a drive. I mean, that was a really good drive by Lewis Hamilton. And then Simon Pagenaud winning the Indy 500 with Alexander Rossi giving everyone a show and completely waving a gesture at the other drivers while going 220 miles per hour. That was fantastic. And then Truex winning a hectic Coke 600. So really good night. I have to get this uploaded. It's going to be like 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. by the time this is up. So if you're watching this the next day, happy Memorial Day. Enjoy the time with your families. I'm in Gainesville all alone, so yay, good life. I'll see you guys later. Hope you're having a great day. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you're not already, at RealRadman. I like to tweet about the races and stuff and communicate with you guys. And a lot of exciting things coming up. I've been trying to think of some things to do in terms of streaming, and I have to upgrade some stuff to do that. But I want to stream a lot more because good news, I can be back on iRacing. My internet is fixed, and I seem like I can race without any blinking or connection issues. So now the next step is I want to stream those races and be able to have a little bit more, I don't know, it would just be fun. It would just be fun to stream those races now, and it would just be a lot of fun for me. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. I'll see you guys later. I think next week we're going to Pocono, where this package is gonna be interesting. I have no idea how it's gonna work at Pocono. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.
I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to, and I can't change, even if I tried. My love, she keeps me warm.